Rain fell in relentless sheets, smearing the city lights into streaks of red and yellow on the slick, glistening asphalt. Every few blocks, the street lamps flickered, as if struggling to stay alive, and the distant hum of traffic was swallowed by the storm, by the relentless pounding rain. Emily Carter tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles white as the windshield wipers barely kept up with the downpour. She had stayed late at the hospital where she worked, tending to emergencies that never seemed to end. Now, driving back to her apartment on the outskirts of Millfield, a small, forgotten town in Ohio, the streets were empty, too empty. Even the usual night wanderers, the kids sneaking cigarettes, the couple walking their dog were gone. Great, Emily muttered, speaking only to herself. Just me and the rain. Perfect. A gust of cold wind blew in, through the barely closed window, carrying with it a metallic, almost sickly scent. Her stomach knotted. Blood, decay, or maybe both. She shook her head, forcing the thought away. She was tired, exhausted, letting her imagination run wild. Turning onto Elm Street, a narrow lane she rarely took, she saw it, an abandoned house. Large, Victorian, a relic of another era, with paint peeling and a porch sagging under years of neglect. One window upstairs flickered. A shadow moved. Emily slowed instinctively. Something was watching. Her pulse quickened. "It's just lightning," she whispered. "Just a shadow." But the feeling of being watched pressed against her chest, heavier with every second. She had driven past this street hundreds of times, and never, ever, had she seen this house. Rumors in town spoke of tragedy, disappearances, stories no one dared repeat aloud. She had laughed, once, as a teenager. Now the laughter felt like a memory from someone else's life. As she passed, the flicker of the upstairs window sharpened, and she saw it, a figure, pale, thin, standing perfectly still, watching, staring at her. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Her foot slammed on the brakes, and the car screeched to a halt. The figure was gone. She exhaled shakily. "Get a grip, Emily," she whispered. "Just a shadow. Just a shadow." But the cold knot in her chest refused to loosen. Then came a sound, low, dragging, deliberate, slow, heavy. Not the porch, not the wind, something else, something moving. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. No signal. Of course, she gripped the wheel tighter. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. And then, the shadow in the window reappeared, closer this time, moving toward the edge. And it smiled. Emily swallowed hard. A human smile. Wrong. Too wide. Too sharp eyes. Hollow. Black. Endless. Panic surged. She fumbled with her keys, shoved the car into drive. But before she could move, the front door creaked open. Slowly, deliberately, from the darkness of the porch emerged a figure. Tall, unnaturally thin, moving with jerky, unnatural motions, joints snapping at angles that should have been impossible. Emily froze. The air around her thickened, cold and oppressive, like the world itself had turned viscous. It wasn't just a person, not entirely human, yet it moved closer, across the wet lawn, into the dim glow of the streetlight, without a single sound. Her instincts screamed, "Run!" But something held her, something sick, magnetic, pulling her forward. A voice came, low, whispering, yet penetrating her very bones. Emily. She wanted to scream, to slam the gas, to disappear. But the voice, calm, insistent, struck her to the core. Another sound followed, faint, like whispers layered beneath her skin, urgent, accusing, pleading. She stumbled out of the car, fumbled for the flashlight on her keychain, shining it toward the house. The beam danced across the porch and froze. Footprints, wet, fresh, one pair, leading toward her. Emily's heart thundered. Whoever or whatever was here had not been standing still. It had walked toward her, Emily. The voice again, softer, closer, almost behind her. She spun. No one, only the house, silent. She ran back to the car, dove inside, slammed the door. Shaking, she tried the ignition. Nothing. The engine refused. Then, in the rearview mirror, she saw it, standing in the middle of the street, watching, penetrating her thoughts, her soul, with empty, black eyes. She tried to reason. It's a person, a prankster, a costume. But her instinctive, raw fear screamed, no, this is not human. Headlights appeared in the distance. Relief. Maybe help. Someone to see this thing. She honked, waved. The car passed, swerving sharply. Empty street. No one. Emily screamed, a mixture of fear, frustration, disbelief. She grabbed her phone. No signal. Low battery. The storm worsened, as if the sky itself was conspiring. She looked back. The windows were dark, empty, silent. Then a single light flickered in the basement window. Emily froze. The basement. She had seen the blueprints in the town archives once. No one had entered that house in decades. No one. Yet the light burned. Dim, small, undeniable. The wind carried a sound scraping, like nails on concrete, and beneath it, a whisper, come down. Emily's fingers tightened on the wheel. Her breath, short, ragged. She wanted to drive, flee, disappear, but a part of her, some sick curiosity, whispered she had to see. Standing there, soaked, shivering, she realized it knew her name, and it was waiting, one step, toward the porch, against her will, slow, hesitant, yet unstoppable. Another shadow moved in the upstairs window. Another whisper, Emily, don't be afraid, just come. Her legs obeyed, and then the porch disappeared beneath her feet. Emily felt the porch vanish beneath her feet, the rain and wind screaming in her ears. For a heartbeat, she thought she was falling forever into nothingness. Then, the world shifted. She landed hard on the basement floor, a dull, bone-jarring thud, her body absorbing the cold, damp concrete. Pain radiated through her legs, her arms, but she didn't dare move too fast. The basement was dark, so dark it swallowed the beam from her keychain flashlight, making it feel like the light had no weight at all. The air smelled of mildew, rot, and something older, something metallic, a faint coppery taste that reminded her of blood. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Every instinct told her to flee, but the staircase behind her, the one that led back to the front door, was gone. Only a wall of rough, peeling brick, slick with damp, remained. Panic surged. She tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Then she heard it, soft scratching. Faint at first, coming from the far corner of the basement. Emily froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She took a hesitant step forward. Another sound, closer now, dragging along the floor. Something or someone was moving toward her. Her flashlight flickered. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting unnaturally, bending at impossible angles. The air grew colder, pressing against her skin, seeping into her bones. Who's there? She whispered, her voice trembling. No answer. Only the dragging, the soft scrape of claws or nails against the concrete. Emily tried to move backward, only to realize she was already surrounded. The corners of the basement seemed to stretch, expand. The ceiling sank slightly, as if the room itself was alive, closing in. And then she saw it, a figure, emerging from the darkest shadow in the corner. Tall, impossibly thin, its limbs bent at angles that made her stomach churn. Its eyes black, endless voids locked onto hers, and its mouth, too wide, too sharp, curved into that same smile she had seen upstairs. Emily's body screamed too. Run, but her legs felt heavy, as though cement had replaced muscle. The figure advanced slowly, deliberately, the sound of its movements swallowed by the oppressive silence. She fumbled for her phone, Maybe, somehow, the light would help. The flashlight anything. The screen flickered to life. She dialed 911, no signal. A shiver ran down her spine. Whoever or whatever was here had cut her off, isolated her. And the thing in the corner. It was closer now. Emily backed toward the wall, desperately seeking an escape. Her hands touched something cold and wet. She glanced down. A pool of dark liquid, spreading slowly across the floor, reflecting the dim beam of her flashlight. Blood. She couldn't tell. Her stomach twisted. The figure spoke, a whisper, yet it carried across the room, as though the walls themselves had become speakers. Emily, come closer. Don't be afraid. Her knees buckled. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw herself at the wall, but she couldn't. Fear had rooted her in place, every nerve ending on fire. Something moved behind her. She spun. Nothing. Only the faint outline of the basement wall, and the pool of liquid inching toward her like a living thing. Her heart thumped. Faster, harder. The figure tilted its head. Emily noticed now. Its face was changing, shifting. Not human anymore. Hollowed, elongated features, eyes blacker than night, a grin splitting the face wider and wider. And then, a sound that made her blood run cold, a whisper from all around her. Layered voices overlapping. Emily. Come, come, come. The air trembled. The room seemed to pulse. Emily's flashlight flickered again, the beam dancing across the walls. For a brief moment, she glimpsed shapes, hands pressed against the brick, faces peering from shadows, mouths opening and closing silently. She screamed. A raw, piercing sound echoing in the basement, and the figure paused, tilted its head, considered her, then it moved. Faster now, gliding across the floor with a speed that made her stomach drop. Emily stumbled backward, her flashlight clattering, to the floor. The beam rolled across the room. She froze. On the wall opposite her, a series of symbols had appeared, glowing faintly. Arcane, impossible to comprehend. Lines that writhed as if alive, twisting and contorting before her eyes. The air smelled of sulfur, and the shadows around the symbols deepened, forming shapes, faces, hands, clawing, reaching. Emily's mind reeled. She wanted to look away, to cover her eyes, but she couldn't. Drawn to the symbols, she took a hesitant step forward. The figure's whisper was closer now, almost directly in her ear. Do not be afraid. Yet, a chill ran through her body. The liquid on the floor bubbled, and then, with a soft, wet snap, a hand, blackened, skeletal, impossibly thin, reached from the puddle. Emily screamed again, stumbling backward. Her flashlight beam illuminated the hand, the arm, the figure, slowly emerging from the liquid, as if it had been hiding beneath the floor itself. Her vision blurred with fear. She stumbled over a broken crate, hitting the wall. Pain exploded in her shoulder. The figure was closer, gliding, silent, its grin wider than ever. Suddenly, the room shifted again. The walls warped, the ceiling sank lower. Shadows stretched and contracted, a heartbeat in the dark. Emily realized she was trapped, not just physically, but mentally. Every instinct, every memory of safety was being erased, replaced with dread. And then, a sound. Soft, childlike giggling. Emily's heart froze. It echoed around the basement. Too many sources, all around her, but invisible. Her mind screamed, this house, this place, it's alive. It's feeding on fear. The figure raised its arm, slowly. Emily thought she could see the faint outline of a knife. Was it just part of the shadow? She couldn't tell. Her flashlight flickered again, and in that instant, the figure disappeared. Emily gasped. Silence returned. The whispers vanished. The puddle of liquid stilled. For a brief, precious second, she thought she was safe. Then came a voice, soft and clear, behind her. Emily. She spun. No one. only the staircase she had landed on earlier. The basement seemed larger now, taller, stretching into darkness. She couldn't comprehend. A new set of footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, coming from the far end of the basement. Not human, not alive. The shadows moved with them, shapes solidifying, then dissolving, then forming again. Emily's hands shook. She tried the door leading to the far corner, locked. Impossible. Her mind raced. Panic, desperation. She tried to remember anything from the archives, from the stories. The house, it takes. It doesn't let go. It remembers. It knows. A cold breath brushed her neck. She whirled. Nothing. Then, the symbols on the wall pulsed brighter. Shapes emerging, from them writhing, clawing toward her. She screamed. Her flashlight fell again. Darkness swallowed the beam. Emily's eyes adjusted just in time to see a shadow rise from the puddle behind her. Taller than before, its grin impossibly wide, its eyes endless voids, and then she heard it clearly, whispering into her mind rather than her ears. "Welcome, Emily. You are ours now." Emily's body shook, soaked in cold sweat, her chest heaving, as if the basement itself had claimed her lungs. She pressed her back against the wall, sliding down to the damp floor, trying to gather any shred of composure. Her flashlight lay a few feet away, its beam flickering weakly, a frail attempt to fight the darkness. The whisper returned, not through her ears this time, through her mind. Clear, persistent. "Emily, we've been waiting." She swallowed, hard, trying to scream, trying to force the panic out, but her voice failed her. The shadows danced across the walls again, twisting, stretching, forming shapes that were almost human, yet grotesque, unnatural. Faces with hollow eyes, mouths moving silently, watching her, judging her. Emily remembered the town's archives, the old stories of Millfield, and the rumors she had laughed at as a teenager. They had all centered around one house, one Victorian relic tucked away in Elm Street. It had been abandoned for decades, yes, but more than that, it had been the scene of tragedies, disappearances, deaths that had never been explained. Her hands trembled as she reached for the flashlight. She needed to see, to understand. But when she finally grabbed it, the beam revealed nothing but darkness, and yet she felt the presence closer. Too close to real thought then. A sound, soft at first, a dragging, wet sound, like something being pulled across concrete. Emily's eyes darted to the corner. The puddle had moved. It crept along the floor, inch by inch, like a living thing, stretching, reaching toward her. A sudden, sharp laugh echoed through the basement, childlike, innocent, yet twisted. It bounced off the walls, multiplying, surrounding her. Emily wanted to cover her ears, to block it out, but it seeped into her skull, drilling, twisting her thoughts. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. She realized, suddenly, that the basement was changing. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing with her. The ceiling undulated, like waves in a black sea. And then she saw them figures forming in the walls, shadows with faces. They moved closer, their mouths opening, stretching impossibly, whispering her name. Over and over, Emily stumbled backward, her hands out, trying to find the stairs, trying to escape. But the far wall was no longer there, only darkness, only shapes moving in impossible directions. Then a whisper, soft, deliberate. "Emily, do you remember?" Her mind went blank. She shook her head. "Remember what?" Another voice joined, deeper. This time, more commanding. "The night you came here as a child. The night you left. But never truly left." Emily froze. Her pulse thundered. Memories she had buried for years surfaced, jagged and sharp. She remembered sneaking into the abandoned house with friends decades ago. She had been 8, curious, reckless. The house had seemed empty then, just old furniture, dusty floors. Nothing more, but now she remembered a door in the basement, hidden behind a panel that no one had ever found. A door she had opened, just a crack, and heard whispers. Whispers calling her name, and the memory of what she had seen. A shadow, similar to the one before her now, watching, waiting, a figure she had sworn she imagined, and it had followed her. Emily's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, clutching her head. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, like a choir of voices. Emily, come to us. Emily, we've been waiting. She forced herself to stand, to focus. Her flashlight flickered again, revealing a shape moving just beyond the puddle. Too fast, too unnatural. The shadow that had haunted her from the upstairs window was here, in the basement, watching, smiling, waiting. Emily tried to run, but her legs refused. They trembled, heavy as lead. And then, the floor beneath her shifted. She stumbled, catching herself just before falling into the expanding puddle. She realized with horror it wasn't water anymore. It was thick, viscous, moving, alive. A soft voice whispered from behind her. The house remembers Emily. It never forgets. You are part of it now. Her mind reeled. The basement walls shimmered. Faces appeared. Hands reached from the shadows. The symbols she had seen yesterday, no, not yesterday earlier, tonight glowed again, this time brighter. They twisted, writhing, forming letters she could barely comprehend. Emily's flashlight fell again. She scrambled to pick it up, and in that moment of darkness, she felt a hand, cold, skeletal, pressed against her shoulder. She screamed, spinning around, but nothing was there. Only shadows, only whispers. Then she heard it, a sound familiar and terrifying, the creak of a floorboard above, like someone stepping cautiously, deliberately. She looked up. The staircase was back, faintly illuminated by a thin shaft of light from above. She could see movement, the shadow figure from upstairs, watching, smiling. Emily's throat went dry. She had to leave. She had to escape. But before she could move, the shadows in the basement lunged. Faces, hands, shapes, all merging, reaching, pulling. She stumbled backward. The flashlight rolled, illuminating the corner of the basement hand. She saw it, a door, hidden, slightly ajar, a faint, warm light seeping through the crack, and behind it, a stairwell, descending deeper than she remembered, spiraling into darkness that seemed to breathe. Her heart pounded. The voice in her mind whispered, "Come, Emily, come." Fear screamed at her. Logic demanded she flee. But some force, magnetic and terrifying, drew her toward the door, toward the stairwell. Emily took a step, and another, her hands pressed against the wall for support. The floor beneath her vibrated softly, like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, alive, from below. She heard it, the softest whisper, but clear, undeniable. "Emily, your name was never yours alone." She paused, every nerve on fire. The shadows in the basement shifted, writhing, forming shapes she could not describe. Faces, smiling, hollow, watching, and then a sound behind her. Wet, slow footsteps approaching. Not human, not alive. She turned. The puddle moved, curling into a figure, tall, thin, impossibly long arms, the grin-wide eyes endless. It spoke, voice low, patient, hungry. "Do you remember the promise, Emily? The night you opened the door. The night you swore you would never speak of us." Emily's mind screamed. The memory returned. She had touched something that night. Something that should not have been touched. Something alive in the walls. Something that waited, patiently, for decades. The figure advanced, silently, gliding, its grin wider, its shadow merging with the shapes in the walls. Emily's legs trembled. She wanted to run, but every step forward toward the stairwell, every attempt to flee, was slowed, resisted, as if the house itself was holding her. And then, she saw it. A figure behind the puddle. Small, childlike, hollow eyes, smiling, whispering. Her own reflection. Not her, exactly, but her form twisted, dark. A version of herself she had never seen before. Emily's scream echoed, swallowed immediately by the shadows. Her flashlight flickered one last time, and in the light, she saw it dozens of faces, dozens of shadows, all watching, waiting, patient, hungry. Her legs moved, slow, trembling, up the stairwell, toward the unknown, toward darkness that smelled of decay, of blood, of whispers older than the town itself. And as she ascended, the shadows whispered her name, over and over. Emily. Welcome home, Emily. We've been waiting. Emily's trembling legs carried her up the spiral stairwell, the walls bending and pulsing as though alive, whispering her name with voices that sounded both familiar and alien. She tried to rationalize, to tell herself that it was fear playing tricks on her mind. But every step, every breath, every flicker of light convinced her otherwise. This was real, too real. The basement below seemed to sigh, as though the house itself was aware of her movement, aware of her attempt to escape. She glanced over her shoulder. The puddle, the blackened shadow gone. But the whisper lingered, curling around her, threading into her thoughts. Emily, come closer. You cannot hide. She swallowed, choking on panic, yet her legs moved toward the top of the stairs, up into a hallway that she did not remember from childhood. The walls were lined with old wallpaper, peeling, damp, smelling of mold and iron. Faint sketches had appeared on it, drawings of faces, twisted, screaming faces, as if etched by hands that had long rotted away. Her flashlight's beam danced over them. Some eyes seemed to move, following her. Some mouths opened, not in sound, but in motion, stretching unnaturally, as though crying silently. Emily's pulse raced. She shook her head, trying to block the images, but her mind was suddenly flooded with memories. The night she had touched the hidden door in the basement as a child, the whispers, the laughter, the promise she had never understood. And now, she realized that something had been waiting for her for decades. Something patient, something eternal. A floorboard creaked behind her. Slowly, deliberately, Emily spun, flashlight shaking in her hand. Nothing, only the hallway stretching ahead, dark and silent, yet alive with some unseen presence. Then, the air shifted. A cold breeze passed through her, carrying with it the metallic temps she had smelled before. She felt it brush her skin, her hair, creeping into her clothes, curling around her bones. It was a presence, not just around her, inside her, breathing with her, thinking with her, and then, a whisper, soft, intimate, inside her mind. Emily, you belong here. She froze, pressed her back against the wall. Her hands shook, her flashlight flickered. The hallway seemed longer than it should be, stretching infinitely in both directions. Shadows began to shift along the floor, crawling, like smoke, stretching toward her feet. Emily forced herself to move forward, step by step, toward a door at the end of the hall. The door was old, wooden, with iron hinges rusted black. Faint light seeped from the crack at its base. She reached out, her fingers trembling, brushing the cold, splintered wood. Then, the floor beneath her groaned, low, deep, resonant. Vibrations ran up her legs. The shadows at her feet writhed, forming shapes she could not comprehend. Figures rose, taller than human, faceless, limbs bending in ways that defied reality. They whispered, called, beckoned. Emily's chest tightened. Her heart thundered. She forced herself to open the door. A room beyond, smaller than expected, circular walls covered with strange, arcane symbols, glowing faintly in phosphorescent green. Candles unlit, floated in mid-air. The air was thick, heavy, almost viscous, and in the center, a pedestal. On the pedestal, an object wrapped in black cloth. Emily felt drawn toward it, compelled. Her hands reached out, shaking, pulling the cloth away. Beneath it, a book, ancient, leather-bound, cracked with age. Symbols embossed on the cover, ones that pulsed faintly, as though alive. A whisper emerged, soft, beckoning, insistent. Read. Remember? Accept. Emily hesitated. Her instincts screamed no. Her rational mind tried to fight the compulsion, but some deep, primal part of her, the part that had been connected to this house since childhood, moved toward the book. Her fingers brushed the cover. The room shivered. The candles ignited. The air pulsed with power, and shadows erupted from the walls, flowing like liquid toward her. The book opened itself, pages turning, revealing text written in a language she could somehow read, though she had never studied it. Words moved across the page, forming visions, memories, secrets. Emily saw herself as a child, opening the basement door. She saw the shadows, the figures, the laughter, and then she saw the truth. The house was alive, not a building, not an object, but a being, a creature that fed on fear, on memory, on life itself. And she had been chosen, marked, bound to it. From the moment she touched the door, tears ran down her face. She tried to step back, but the shadows surged, coiling around her legs, lifting her, holding her in place. Their whispers grew louder, overlapping. Emily, remember. Emily, belong. Emily, ours. She clawed at the book, at the symbols, desperate for something, anything. Her mind raced. What had she promised? What had she agreed to? She remembered a feeling, a pact she had made, unknowingly, as a child. A promise whispered into the darkness. A promise to never leave. And now, the house was reminding her. The house was collecting on its debt. The tallest shadow stepped forward, its grin impossibly wide, its eyes endless voids. It leaned toward her, its voice, low and cold, filled the room. Do you understand now, Emily? You cannot leave. You were never allowed. This is your home, your destiny, your cage. Emily screamed, thrashing, pulling at the shadows. The room spun, the symbols on the walls writhed, the book pulsed. The whispers became a roar inside her mind, echoing her own fears, her own memories, twisting them, turning them against her. Then, silence. The shadows retreated slightly, revealing the pedestal. The book floated, pages open, glowing. The words shifted, forming a single, undeniable command: accept or be consumed. Emily's body shook, her mind screamed, her heart pounded. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down, the house's hunger, its patience, its endless, terrifying intelligence. And then, a new sound, a soft, almost human whisper. Emily, it's not too late. Her head snapped toward the voice. A figure emerged from the shadows, smaller, human, real, someone she recognized, not entirely, familiar, yet distant. A reflection of herself, older, stronger, defiant. You can fight, it said. You are not theirs yet. Emily's hands clenched, her mind raced. The shadows surged again, but this time, she stood taller, drawing strength from herself, from memory, from willpower she hadn't known she had. The book pulsed, glowing brighter, as if reacting to her resistance. The shadows recoiled, hissed, and the room trembled. Emily realized, in that moment, that she had a choice. Not just survival, but confrontation, acceptance, or rebellion. And for the first time since she entered the house, she felt power. The figure beside her nodded. It's your turn now, Emily. Choose. The room waited, the house waited, the shadows waited, the whispers held their breath, and Emily drew in a long, shuddering breath, her pulse steadying. She was not done yet. Emily's hands trembled as she stared at the glowing book. the shadows swirling around the edges of the room like smoke. The whispers had become a roaring tide in her mind, pressing, pushing, threatening to drown her in fear. But she felt the presence beside Hertha, smaller, human-like figure, the reflection of herself. It radiated calm, strength, a tether to reality. "You can do this," it whispered, soft but firm. "You are not theirs yet. You can fight." Emily swallowed hard, her chest tightening. Her eyes flicked to the book again. Its pages pulsed, alive, beckoning her. She knew what it wanted, to bind her, to claim her completely. She clenched her fists. A surge of determination shot through her. "Then I fight," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the whispers. The shadows hissed, their forms twisted, stretching toward her, reaching, probing, testing. The tallest shadow, the one with the impossibly wide grin and hollow eyes, stepped forward. Its movements were fluid, unnatural, silent. The whispers became words, overlapping, urgent. "Emily, you belong. Accept, accept." Emily gritted her teeth, forcing her mind to focus. She remembered the symbols on the walls, the patterns in the book. They were not just decorations, they were keys, conduits, tools, and if she could understand them, perhaps she could use them against the house. Her fingers moved almost instinctively over the glowing pages. Words formed under her touch, rearranging, shifting. She felt energy pulsing through her, a resonance that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. She spoke aloud, haltingly at first, a chant she didn't fully understand, but felt in her soul. The shadows recoiled. The room shook. The air pulsed, thick and oppressive, and Emily felt the power of the house pressing against her. Testing her resolve, the reflection beside her nodded. "Yes, that's it. Use their own power. Make them fear you." Emily drew a deep breath, feeling the words flow from her lips. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, merging, forming monstrous shapes she could barely comprehend. Hands, faces, claws, teeth, eyes that should not exist, all writhing in agony. A sudden force slammed into her from behind, knocking her to the floor. She hit her head on the cold concrete. Stars exploded in her vision, but she forced herself to rise. The shadows had advanced again, coiling around her, restraining, suffocating. The reflection of herself reached out. "Focus. Remember your promise. Your will is stronger than theirs." Emily remembered. The promise she had whispered as a child, unknowingly. The pact she had made in fear and curiosity. She hadn't understood then, but now she did. The house had claimed her attention, her soul, her memory, but it had not claimed her will. She forced her mind onto one clear thought: "I am not yours. I choose myself." The symbols on the walls pulsed brighter, reacting to her defiance. Energy surged through her veins, through her fingertips, radiating into the room. She pointed at the shadows, chanting again, more confident, louder. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, their forms fragmenting, collapsing inward. The tallest shadow screamed, a sound that was not sound, filling the basement with a vibration that rattled her bones. But Emily held firm, and then the floor cracked. A fissure appeared, splitting the basement floor like ice. Light, pale, and cold, seeped up from the depths below. Shapes moved within it, hands, faces, eyes, all reaching upward, screaming silently. The house was retaliating. Emily stumbled backward, her flashlight falling, but the reflection guided her. Step into it, face it, own it. Fear clenched her stomach, but she stepped forward, into the fissure, into the light. The basement walls seemed to dissolve, replaced by darkness that stretched infinitely. Shadows swirled around her, attempting to drag her down, to claim her. She felt cold hands on her arms, pulling, grasping, but she forced herself to move deeper, chanting, repeating the words that now felt like a weapon. And then she saw them, a chamber below, vast, and impossibly large. Ancient stone walls, covered in glowing symbols, older than the town itself. Pools of viscous black liquid, like the one in the basement, dotted the floor, and in the center, a figure, larger than any shadow she had seen, composed entirely of darkness, moving fluidly, eyes like burning coals, a grin wide and endless, the house's core, the entity controlling the shadows, the whispers, the entire structure. It spoke, not with a voice, but directly into her mind. Emily, you are mine, always mine. You cannot resist. Emily felt a cold rush of despair, but she remembered the reflection's words. Your will is your weapon. Your fear is their leash. Take control. Her hands moved over the book she had brought with her, the pages glowing brighter with each word she spoke aloud. Symbols etched themselves into the floor beneath her feet, pulsing with energy. She felt it, the resonance of the house, its heartbeat, its life force. And she pushed back, commanding, bending the shadows, the darkness, toward her will. The entity screamed, a sound that rattled the chamber, shaking stone and spirit alike. Shadows twisted violently, retreating. Emily's heart pounded, but she did not falter. She repeated the words, louder, stronger, until the fissure itself seemed to tremble. And then, silence. Emily stood alone, the black liquid pooling harmlessly. Around her feet, the shadows withdrawn, the whispers gone. The reflection beside her smiled, nodding. You've done it, for now, but the house will not forgive. It never forgets. Emily sank to her knees, trembling, tears running down her face. She had survived, but she knew, instinctively, that this battle was only the beginning. The house had marked her, it had tested her, and it would come again. She glanced at the book, now pulsing faintly, dormant for the moment. The symbols etched into the floor glowed softly, like embers waiting to ignite. Emily understood. The house's power was vast, ancient, and patient. But now she had a foothold. Now she had knowledge. And most importantly, she had willpower. The chamber was silent, but Emily could feel it watching, waiting. And she knew one truth, chilling and undeniable. This was not over. The house would not let her go, and when it returned, she would be ready. Emily sat on the cold stone floor of the hidden chamber, her legs trembling, her mind racing. The shadows had withdrawn, for now, leaving only a heavy silence. The book lay open beside her, glowing faintly, whispering secrets she both feared and craved. Her reflection, the smaller figure that mirrored her every movement, stood silently, watching, waiting. She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to make sense of what had happened. The house, it was alive, not just a building, not just a relic, something older, something patient, something that fed on fear, memory, and souls. And she, Emily, had been bound to it from the moment she had been a child. Her thoughts turned to her family. Her parents had moved away from Millfield when she was young, wanting to escape the whispers of the townsfolk, the stories of disappearances, the shadow of the house. But she remembered. Memories she had buried. Flashes of her father standing at the edge of the property, staring at the house as if he could feel its heartbeat, as if he could hear its whispers. And her mother. She had never spoken of it, never told Emily what she knew, but the fear in her eyes, the tension in her voice, whenever the house was mentioned, it had been real. Emily's mind raced. Had her family known more than she realized? Had they too been touched by the house's influence? The reflection beside her seemed to sense her thoughts, tilting its head. The house never forgets. Emily. It touches those connected to its legacy. Your family. You were never separate from it. Emily. Shivered legacy. She whispered. What do you mean? The reflection gestured to the glowing book. Pages turned, almost on their own, revealing images, photographs, drawings, diagrams, faces, hollow eyes, twisted mouths, expressions of terror frozen forever. And then, her family. generations of them, men and women, children even, who had lived near or inside the house. All connected, all marked. Emily's heart pounded. The realization was terrifying. The house, it had been hunting her bloodline, feeding on it, growing stronger with each generation. The disappearances, the madness, the whispered stories in Millfield, all connected, all part of a pattern she had only now begun to understand. She turned the pages further. Symbols pulsed, shifting. Some glowed brighter, as though recognizing her touch. And then she saw something new, a hidden section of the basement she had not encountered. Not on the stairwell, not in her memory, a room beneath. The chamber, older than the house itself. A sanctuary or a prison. A place where the house had trapped souls, collecting them, feeding, growing stronger with each century. The reflection stepped closer. This is where the house stores its power, its victims, the past, the present, even those it has yet to claim. You can go, but beware. The deeper you go, the stronger it is. But the knowledge you gain there, it can be your weapon. Emily swallowed hard. The choice was terrifying. The house would fight her every step of the way, but if she wanted to end this, to break free, she had no other path. She approached the pedestal. The book pulsed. Symbols etched themselves into the floor, forming a mappa guide. She followed it with her fingers, tracing the path down into the darkness below. Each step sent a shiver up her spine. Each whisper of the house tugged at her, tempting, threatening. The passage descended sharply, spiraling deeper than any stairwell she had known. The air grew colder, thick with the smell of decay, iron, and something else, something older. A presence, waiting, watching. Shadows moved along the walls, forming shapes she could not comprehend. Figures of those who had been claimed, faces pressed against the stone, mouths open, eyes hollow. Some reached out as she passed, long dead hands brushing her sleeves. Emily shivered, but she pressed on. Her reflection stayed close, a tether to reality. Finally, she reached a vast chamber, larger than anything she had imagined. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. The floor was uneven, stone slabs cracked and slick with black liquid. In the center, a pit, a swirling vortex of shadows and light, an abyss that seemed to pulse, breathe, alive with the collected souls of the house's victims. Emily felt their whispers, millennia of fear, pain, and anger all converging. The house itself spoke, not through words, but through sensation. A pressure in her chest, a pull at her mind, a cold that seeped into her bones. Emily, you should not be here. It is too late. It is your destiny. She swallowed her fear, grounding herself. The reflection guided her forward. Do not succumb. This is where you turn the tide. Face it, own it, control it. Emily stepped closer to the pit. The shadows lashed out, twisting, trying to drag her in. Faces emerged, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes pleading, accusing. Some familiar, some unknown. She recognized some from the photographs in the book, victims of the house over. Centuries. Her hands rose instinctively. The book glowed brighter, hovering beside her. Symbols etched into the floor pulsed in response to her presence. She spoke aloud, chanting, forcing the words through her fear, her desperation, her will. The shadows shrieked, a soundless, soul-shattering scream that echoed in her mind. Hands reached out from the pit, trying to grasp her, pull her into the abyss. But Emily held firm. Her reflection mirrored her movements, guiding, steadying. She realized now the house's power was not infinite. It was drawn from fear, from submission. If she refused to yield, if she confronted it with clarity, strength, and will, she could bend it, control it, even weaken it. The tallest shadow, the entity, the core, emerged from the vortex, towering, eyes like burning coals, grin impossibly wide. It lashed out, a tendril of pure darkness aimed at her chest. Emily braced herself, raising her hands. Symbols flared. Light shot from the book, striking the shadow. The entity recoiled, screeching, twisting, pulling at the edges of the chamber. Emily's voice rose, louder, stronger, chanting the words she now understood, commanding the symbols, bending the shadows toward her will. The pit churned violently. Faces, hands, screams all twisted in chaos. And then, silence. The entity reeled back, dissolving into the swirling shadows. The vortex dimmed, the black liquid recoiling from her feet. The chamber was quiet, almost peaceful, though the air still vibrated faintly, a reminder of the house's presence. Emily sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted, but alive. The reflection beside her smiled. You have taken the first step, Emily. You have challenged it. But remember, the house is patient. It will return, stronger, smarter. Hunger never dies. Emily looked around, absorbing the enormity of what she had seen. The history, the victims, the abyss. And she understood something crucial. The fight was far from over. But now, she held knowledge, power, will. She glanced at the book, at the symbols, at the shadows receding into the walls. One truth became clear. She could fight, and she would not stop. Emily's legs trembled as she stood in the chamber. The black liquid receding from her feet, the shadows dissolved into the walls, leaving only the faint hum of the house. She felt every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse of the building around her. The house was patient, yes, but she had survived, and now she understood. The book hovered beside her, glowing faintly, pages flipping to reveal symbols she had not noticed before. Some were familiar, others alien, but she felt a resonance now, a connection that went beyond fear. She could sense the flow of energy, the pulse of the house, the threads connecting each shadow, each whisper, each memory. The reflection beside her whispered, "You have power now, Emily, knowledge and will. But power without action is nothing. You must confront it, claim the deeper layers, or it will consume you in time." Emily swallowed, nodding. She had no choice. To survive, to protect herself, to end the cycle of terror, she had to descend further into the deepest, oldest parts of the house. The book's symbols guided her to a narrow stairway, hidden beneath the floor. She traced them with her hand, feeling the vibrations of energy thrumming beneath the stone. Each step down was colder, heavier. The air thickened with the scent of decay, iron, and something older, something alive. The shadows began to reappear, creeping along the walls, whispering her name. Faces appeared in the darkness, twisted, hollow-eyed, mouths opening silently in anguish. Emily kept her voice steady, reciting the words, commanding the energy, feeling it bend to her will. The shadows recoiled slightly as she descended. The stairwell ended in a vast chamber, older than the one above, walls covered in runes that pulsed with faint green light. The floor was uneven, carved stone, slick with black liquid that seemed to react to her presence. In the center stood a circle of statues, humanoid figures, their faces frozen in terror, hands reaching outward as if warning intruders. Emily's breath caught. The book pulsed in response. She sensed the presence of the house's core somewhere below, deeper still. She had entered a part of the house few had ever seen, a place where it kept its most ancient secrets. A sudden movement. The shadows surged from the walls, coalescing into forms tall, thin eyes glowing red, mouths stretching impossibly wide. The tallest among them, the entity, emerged first, its voice low and insidious, penetrating Emily's mind. "Emily, you cannot resist. You belong to the house." Emily stepped forward, raising her hands. Symbols glowed beneath her feet, reacting to her will. The entity shrieked, twisting violently, reaching for her. She recited the words she had learned, louder, commanding, bending the shadows back. The chamber shook. The statues trembled. Some cracked, falling to the floor, releasing a cold mist that wrapped around Emily's legs. She did not falter. Instead, she focused, channeling her energy, feeling the book's power resonate with her own. From the shadows emerged figures former victims of the house, hollow eyes, twisted expressions, yet they seemed to hesitate before her, as if recognizing her will. Emily realized something chilling. The house's power relied on fear, on submission. If she resisted, its control weakened. She advanced toward the deepest corner of the chamber, where a black vortex swirled in the air, the entity's heart, the core from which all shadows emerged. The air around it shimmered, alive, pulsating, with dark energy. The entity lashed out. Tendrils of darkness shot toward Emily, twisting, reaching, trying to envelop her. She raised her hands, chanting, the symbols beneath her feet flaring with light. The shadows shrieked, recoiling, twisting in agony. Emily felt a surge of strength, a clarity she had never known. The book pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. She realized she could not just defend, she could attack. She focused, directing energy into the vortex. Symbols etched themselves into the air, glowing, pulsing, striking at the core. The entity screamed, a soundless, soul-shattering roar that vibrated through the chamber. Shadows twisted violently, faces screaming, hands clawing at nothing, trying to hold on to the energy she was stealing. Emily pressed forward, chanting, her voice rising above the chaos. And then, a figure appeared in the vortex. Small, human, familiar, her reflection, but older, stronger, guiding her. You are ready, Emily. Take control, command it, bind it. Emily's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer to the vortex, hands outstretched. Energy flowed from her, from the book, from the symbols beneath her feet, into the swirling darkness. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, some dissipating, others merging into the vortex, which quivered under her influence. The statues trembled, some shattering entirely, releasing spirits, whispers, and fragments of memory. Emily felt the weight of centuries pressing down, but she held firm. Her will, her determination, her knowledge, they became weapons. The entity writhed, its voice in her mind, furious, desperate. You cannot contain me. You cannot resist. I am eternal. Emily's heart pounded. She focused on one truth. Eternity could be resisted if the will was strong enough. She channeled all her energy, all her fear, all her anger, all her defiance into the symbols, into the book, into herself. The vortex trembled violently. The shadows screamed, twisting, merging, clawing at the edges. The entity's form distorted, shrinking, splintering, faltering. Emily stepped forward, chanting, commanding, bending it to her will. The air shimmered, the chamber shook, the black liquid hissed, and then silence. The vortex collapsed inward, imploding, drawing the shadows. With it, the chamber went still. The statues stood intact, faintly glowing, but the oppressive presence of the house had lessened. Emily sank to her knees, exhausted, trembling, but alive. The reflection beside her smiled. You have done it, for now. But remember, the house is patient. It will test you again, stronger, smarter. Hunger never dies. Emily nodded, tears streaming. She had survived, she had fought, she had claimed power. But the house had left a warning. This was not over. Not by far. She rose slowly, brushing herself off. The shadows were gone, for now. The vortex dissolved, leaving only the pulsing symbols beneath her feet. The book floated gently beside her, pages glowing softly. She had learned. She had fought. She had survived. But she knew, deep in her bones, the house would return, and when it did, she would be ready. Emily's body trembled as she stepped cautiously through the ancient chamber, her flashlight cutting through the thick, oppressive darkness. The symbols etched into the floor pulsed faintly, illuminating the walls, revealing more statues twisted, humanoid, their faces frozen in expressions of terror and agony. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the house itself was pressing down, weighing her spirit, testing her resolve. The air was thick, suffocating, carrying whispers of long-dead voices, overlapping, urgent, pleading. Some words were clear names, dates, fragments of promises and curses, but most were a terrifying cacophony, impossible to decipher. Emily's heart raced. Her mind spun, trying to keep grasp of reality, while the house sought to unravel her from within. Beside her, the reflection of herself, a guide, a tether to her own strength, remained silently observant. Its eyes glimmered with an intensity that mirrored Emily's own growing resolve. Deeper, it whispered, its voice steady, unwavering. The truth lies below, but beware. The house will test you more here than it ever has. Emily nodded. She descended a narrow spiral stair hidden behind a cracked wall, following the pulsing symbols on the book. Each step led her into colder, heavier air. A metallic temps filled her nostrils. The shadows grew thicker, more aggressive, whispering threats, laughing softly, impossibly. Faces appeared and vanished along the walls, distorted, hollow-eyed, mouths moving in silent screams. At the base of the stairs, she reached a massive iron door, old, rusted, etched with ancient runes. The book hovered in front of her, pages glowing, forming a pattern that aligned perfectly with the runes. Emily took a deep breath, forcing herself to steady her shaking hands. "This is it," the reflection said. "Beyond this door lies the heart of the house, the oldest chamber, the secret it has kept for centuries, and the truth about your family, Emily's." Fingers traced the runes. A low hum began, vibrating through the stone floor. The air thickened further, cold and heavy, and whispers escalated into screams. She pushed the door open, revealing a chamber so vast she could barely see the walls. The room was filled with shadows, darker than any she had encountered. Tendrils of darkness stretched from the floor, ceiling, and walls, coiling like serpents. At the center, a massive stone altar pulsed with an eerie green light, surrounded by human skulls and bones, arranged in patterns she couldn't comprehend. Hovering above the altar was the book, ancient, powerful, thrumming with energy, and in the shadows beyond, the entity waited. Taller than any human, its form fluid and ever-shifting, eyes glowing red, grin impossibly wide. It radiated menace, hunger, patience, being older than time itself. Emily stepped forward. Her reflection mirrored her movements, guiding, steadying. "Emily, it's time," it whispered. "Face it. Command it. Know your bloodline's truth." Emily took a deep breath, focusing. She remembered the visions in the book, the generations of her family, all touched, marked by the house. Their fear, their defiance, their failures. And then a horrifying realization. The house had not just hunted them. It had bound them, creating a legacy of fear and power, a cycle that fed its strength over centuries. The entity moved forward, shadows writhing, tendrils lashing, forming faces of past victims, people she recognized from the photographs in the book. They screamed silently, reaching toward her. Emily felt the fear pressing in, but she channeled her will through the symbols, chanting the words she had learned, guiding the energy, bending the shadows. The shadows hissed, recoiling. The skulls on the altar vibrated, shaking as if alive. Emily advanced, chanting louder, feeling her energy merge with the book's power. She could sense the house's core, its essence within the altar, within the shadows, within the air. Itself. Suddenly, the floor cracked, revealing a chasm beneath the altar. From it rose figures, former victims, their faces twisted in agony, hands reaching, eyes pleading. The whispers intensified, overlapping into a deafening roar. Emily staggered, but the reflection steadied her. "They are bound to the house, but not to you. Use your will, Emily. Command the power. Emily raised her hands. Symbols etched into the floor flared, glowing brightly. The book pulsed, and energy surged, connecting her to the house, the shadows, and the spirits. She focused, channeling every ounce of her will, every shred of defiance. The entity shrieked, tendrils lashing, trying to ensnare her. But Emily stepped forward, chanting, directing the energy into the altar. The shadows twisted violently, merging, clawing at each other, and then exploding into the air in a burst of dark light. The altar cracked, glowing green energy spilling outward. Emily felt the house recoil, its presence faltering, confused. She realized something terrifying and exhilarating. The house's power was not absolute. It could be resisted, contained, and even challenged by someone with knowledge, will, and bloodline connection. The reflection reached out. Now, Emily, bind it. Take control. Finish what your ancestors could not. Emily approached the altar, placing her hands on its cold stone. Energy surged into her, overwhelming, intoxicating, terrifying. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down, the memories of every victim, every whisper, every shadow, and then a clarity. She saw the truth. The house had been created centuries ago by an ancestor of hers, someone who had sought power and eternal life. The ancestor's spirit had been corrupted, twisted, merging with the house, creating the entity she faced now. Her family's legacy, fear, suffering, defiance, was all tied to this ancient power. Emily's voice rang out, steady, commanding, chanting the words that flowed from the book and her own will. Symbols etched into the floor, into the air, into the altar itself, flaring with energy. The entity shrieked, recoiling, twisting violently. Shadows writhed, trying to resist, but Emily's power surged, stronger, purer, guided by knowledge and defiance. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The house, the shadows, the entity all paused, suspended, caught between centuries of control and the defiance of one determined soul. Emily took a deep breath, focusing all her energy, and shouted, "I am mine, not yours, not theirs, mine." The entity screamed, a soundless, soul-shattering wail, and then imploded. The shadows collapsed, the altar cracked, the skulls shattered, and the chamber was silent. The air shimmered, the green glow faded, leaving only faint symbols etched in the stone. Emily sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted, but victorious. The house's oppressive presence had lessened, its hunger restrained, its power challenged, but she knew the battle was far from over. Her reflection smiled, a mixture of pride and warning. "You've done what few could, but the house is patient. It will return, and next time, it will come with more than shadows. You must be ready." Emily nodded, tears streaming. She had survived. She had fought. She had claimed her knowledge and power. But the house's legacy was still there, ancient, patient, and watching. One truth was undeniable. The fight for her soul land, for the souls of those bound to the house, was only beginning. And Emily, she would be ready. Emily's heart pounded as she stood in the chamber, the cold stone beneath her feet, vibrating faintly. The shadows were gone, for now, leaving only a suffocating silence that pressed against her chest. Her reflection remained beside her, silent, steady, a guiding tether to her own courage. She could feel it, something deeper, older, more sinister. The house was not just a building, not just a collection of shadows. It was alive, ancient, patient, and infinitely cunning. Every floor, every wall, every shadow had been designed to test, to trap, to consume. And now, at last, it had decided, the final test. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, vibrating in her bones. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of iron and decay. From the darkness, tendrils of shadow emerged, curling, writhing like serpents. And then, the entity, taller than any human, its form fluid, eyes burning red, grin impossibly wide. Its voice resonated directly in her mind. Emily, you should not have come. You cannot escape. You cannot resist. You belong to me. Emily's breath caught, her chest tightening, but she raised her hands, summoning the energy she had learned to command. Symbols etched into the floor flared, pulsing with light. The book hovered before her, pages glowing, alive. She had survived the shadows, faced the core, discovered the family legacy, and now she would finish this. I am not yours, she shouted, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. Not now, not ever. The shadows surged, forming faces of long-dead victims, her ancestors, town residents, the countless souls the house had claimed. Their mouths moved silently, pleading, accusing. Emily's chest tightened as the whispers became deafening, overlapping. Into a roar of despair, the reflection whispered urgently, "Focus, Emily. Use their fear against them. Bind it, control it. Do not falter." Emily closed her eyes, drawing on every ounce of willpower. She reached out to the book, feeling the energy course through her fingertips, connecting her mind, body, and soul to the symbols around her. The house's essence pulsed, probing, testing her resolve. The entity lunged, tendrils of darkness aimed to envelop her. Emily responded instinctively, channeling the symbol's energy into a protective sphere around her. The shadows hissed, recoiling, twisting violently. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down, yet she did not falter. She focused on one truth. The house's power came from fear. If she refused it, it weakened with a surge of determination. Emily advanced toward the entity. Shadows clawed at her, trying to pull her into the vortex of despair. But she forced herself forward, chanting, directing energy with precision, bending the darkness toward her will. The entity shrieked, a soundless soul-shattering roar, and the chamber shook violently. Stones cracked, dust fell, and the statues trembled, some shattering entirely, releasing whispers of the trapped souls. Emily felt their despair, their fear, their pain, but she channeled it, transforming it into energy, directing it toward the entity. And then she saw it, a vision, clear and horrifying. The ancestor who had created the house, merging with its shadows, binding souls, twisting the house's essence to eternity. The legacy of her family's bloodline was tied to this corruption. The cycle could continue or it could end. Emily clenched her fists, chanting louder, stronger, her voice echoing through the chamber. Symbols flared, the altar cracked, the black liquid recoiled. The entity writhed, screaming in her mind, tendrils lashing wildly. She stepped closer, placing her hands on the altar, sending waves of energy surging through the chamber. The shadows screamed, twisting violently, faces contorting in fear, pain, and rage. Emily felt her own strength waning, but she focused, drawing on the memory of her family, the knowledge she had gained, the reflection guiding her. "I am the last of my line," she shouted, "and I claim my will. I break your hold. I am free." The entity shrieked, collapsing into itself, shadows exploding outward in a violent eruption. Energy radiated from the altar, pulsing through the chamber, shaking walls, breaking stones, splintering the black liquid. The air shimmered, thick with light and shadow. And then, silence. Emily sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted. The oppressive presence of the house had lessened dramatically, though she could still feel its faint pulse, as if it had been wounded but not destroyed. Her reflection smiled, a mixture of pride and warning. "You have done what few could. You have ended the cycle for now. But remember, the house is patient. It will test again. It will seek to reclaim what you have taken." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She had faced the entity, confronted the house's darkest core, and survived. She had broken the cycle of fear that had bound her family for generations. The whispers of the trapped souls faded, leaving only faint echoes, like distant memories. She rose slowly, brushing herself off, and looked around the chamber. The shadows had retreated into the walls. The altar cracked, but dormant, and the symbols on the floor pulsed softly, a reminder of the power she now held. Her reflection gestured toward a narrow passage at the far end of the chamber. There is one final step, Emily. You must seal it, bind it, and ensure the house cannot rise again. Emily nodded, summoning the last of her strength. She walked toward the passage, every step heavy with fatigue, but driven by determination. The house seemed to watch, its pulse faint but insistent, testing, probing, as if it knew the endgame was near. The passage led to a small, hidden room, its walls covered in the oldest symbols she had ever seen. At the center, a basin of black liquid shimmered faintly, as though alive. Emily realized this was the source, the anchor of the house's power, its connection to the world. If she could seal it, she could finally end its hunger. She placed the book on the floor, opening it to the pages that glowed brightest. Symbols etched themselves into the stone, reacting to her touch. Emily began chanting, her voice steady, commanding, weaving the energy of the book, the chamber, and her will into a binding spell. The black liquid writhed, shadows surging, faces screaming silently, trying to escape. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, but Emily's energy held firm, containing them, forcing them downward. The chamber trembled, stones cracking, dust falling, yet she did not falter. By my will, by my bloodline, by my strength, she intoned, I bind you, I claim you, I seal you. Nevermore shall you rise. The black liquid pulsed violently, then erupted in a blinding flash of green light. The shadows screamed, twisting, writhing, then collapsed. The room fell silent. The oppressive air lifted. The house's pulse faded, weaker than ever, restrained, shackled. Emily sank to the floor, trembling, tears streaming, utterly spent. She had done it. She had faced the darkest heart of the house, confronted the entity, broken the cycle, and bound the power that had haunted her family for generations. Her reflection smiled one last time, fading slowly. You are ready. You have survived. But remember, vigilance is eternal. The shadows never sleep. Emily nodded, exhausted, but victorious. The house was quiet now, its hunger restrained, its power bound. She had broken the cycle. She had reclaimed her will. For now, the house slept, but she knew, in her bones, deep and unshakable, the final battle had been won. But the shadow of the house would linger forever, and Emily would be ready. Emily stepped cautiously through the final chamber, her body still trembling from the ordeal. The air was lighter now, almost normal, but the shadows still lingered faintly, curling along the corners of the walls. She could feel the house's heartbeat, slower, restrained but still there, patient, waiting. The book floated beside, her pages glowing softly. She opened it to the last chapter, the final symbols etched across the pages pulsating with quiet power. These symbols were older, deeper, older than the house itself. They were the keynote, just to sealing the house, but to ending the cycle entirely. Her reflection appeared beside her one last time, its eyes serious, unwavering. This is it, Emily. One final step. You must bind the essence completely, not partially, not temporarily. If you falter, all you fought for will be undone. Emily took a deep breath. Her hands trembled as she traced the symbols on the floor, feeling the energy hum through her veins. The house's pulse quickened in response, sensing her intent, resisting her will. A sudden movement caught her eye. Shadows surged from the walls, twisting violently, forming faces of ancestors, of victims, of the entity itself. The tallest, most monstrous form, its eyes glowing red, grin impossibly wide, emerged at the center. The entity's voice echoed in her mind, low, insidious. You cannot destroy me. You cannot seal me. I am eternal. Your blood calls to me. Emily's chest tightened, but she lifted her head. You are bound to the past. I am the present. I am my own bloodline, my own will. She raised her hands, chanting the final incantation, each word precise, deliberate, weighted with power. The shadows surged toward her, tendrils lashing, faces screaming silently. Emily stepped forward, channeling energy from the book, the symbols, and her own soul. The chamber trembled violently, dust falling from the ceiling, stones cracking beneath the force of unleashed power. I claim my family's name, my legacy, my will, she shouted. By my hands, by my heart, by my defiance, I seal you forever. The entity screamed, a soundless, soul-shattering wail that shook the chamber. Shadows twisted violently, clawing at each other, before collapsing inward, drawn toward the center where Emily focused all her energy. The black liquid in the basin shimmered, alive, writhing, resisting, but Emily did not falter. She placed her hands on the basin, feeling the pulse of the house, the essence of the entity, and every shadowed soul bound to it. Her energy flowed into the liquid, binding, sealing, containing. The chamber shook, a blinding light flaring from the altar and the basin. Symbols on the walls glowed brightly, ancient power responding to her will. Emily's voice rose, steady, commanding, echoing in every corner. You are bound. You are finished. No longer will you claim fear. No longer will you consume. The shadows shrieked violently, twisting, collapsing inward. The entity's form splintered, imploding into the basin of black liquid. Emily's energy surged, sealing every crack, binding every tendril, every whisper, every essence of the house's hunger. The light dimmed. The chamber fell silent. Emily sank to the floor, trembling, exhausted beyond words. The oppressive presence was gone, or at least restrained completely. The house's pulse was now faint, almost imperceptible. Shackled by her will, her reflections smiled faintly, fading slowly. You've done it, Emily. The cycle is broken. The house is sealed. But vigilance is eternal. Shadows never sleep entirely. Emily nodded, tears streaming. She felt the weight of generations lifted, the horror she had endured, the power she had claimed. She had faced the entity, the house, her family legacy, and had emerged victorious. Slowly, she walked back through the corridors. The walls quiet now, the shadows receded, almost respectful. The statues she had seen earlier stood intact, some faintly glowing with residual energy, witnesses to her triumph. As she reached the front door, she paused, looking back. The house was still imposing, ancient, a silent sentinel of centuries, but it was no longer a predator, was contained, shackled by her will, and by her courage. Outside, the night was calm. A faint breeze whispered through the trees, carrying away the lingering echoes of fear. Emily stepped into the cool air, feeling the weight of the house lift from her shoulders. She had survived. She had won. She had reclaimed her life, but even as she walked away, a faint pulse of darkness lingered at the edges of her vision, reminding her that the house never truly dies. It waits, patient, eternal, and one day, someone else might awaken it. Emily took a deep breath, eyes forward. She had survived the shadows, conquered the entity, and sealed the house. Her legacy was her own now, unbroken, unclaimed by the horrors that had haunted her family for centuries. She smiled faintly, a mix of relief and resolve. The silent shadows had been defeated, for now, and as she disappeared into the night, the house loomed behind her, silent, waiting, patient, its secrets sealed, but not gone.